After Job's agonizing, confusing questions, after his friends' misguided accusations, after Elihu's wise observations, at last, God speaks. Now, my guess is that what God says here is a surprise to everybody who has ever read the book of Job. If you were to predict what God would say to this man in this moment, I don't think you would predict this. Then the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm. Do you remember that Job said, "Oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I might even come to his seat," in chapter 23. Well, Job, this is what you asked for, and this is what you have. At last the two will now speak. Who is this that obscures my plans with words without knowledge? Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Immediately the tables have turned. Job wanted to question God, to put on a trial, to examine him, but instead, God questions Job. And he starts with the fundamentals, not the complex nature of good and evil, sovereignty and sin. No, the simple things, like the very world in which you stand. How did it come to be? Verse 4, where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me, if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footings set? Or who laid its cornerstone while the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy? Of course, Job did not see and does not know how the world was made, but the point is apparent. If you don't know how these physical things came to be and continually operate, if you don't know even that, how can you claim to understand the spiritual, the invisible, and the eternal character of God? God continues, who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and wrapped it in thick darkness? When I fixed limits for it and set its doors and bars in place? When I said, this far you may come and no farther. Here is where your proud waves halt. The poetry of God is a glorious thing to behold, isn't it? But what a beautiful way God has of making his point. Think of a massive body of water like the Atlantic Ocean. Think of the enormous heights and depths of the waves at times when the conditions are just right. How they have tipped ships and sunk sailors. How utterly untamable and uncontrollable the ocean is. And yet, by the time it reaches the boundary set by God, it laps gently up onto the beach and falls back in on itself. For several more verses, God points out the glory and the splendor and the vastness and the unsearchable nature of the seas to make the point to Job that there is just so much he does not know. He spent time looking down at the ocean and the extraordinary depths below, and then God now lifts Job's gaze above to the storehouses of snow and to the place where the lightning and the wind come from. And he even lists here some of the constellations of stars that even existed in Job's day. Now, I find this a deeply humbling thought that kind of connects us with all humanity. The same constellations of stars that we look up at and see in the night sky have been gazed upon by every other human being who has ever lived. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they looked up and saw these stars. Adam and Eve in the garden, they looked up and saw these stars. Hitler and Churchill, Judas and Jesus, they all looked up and saw these stars. All of the events of human history have been lived out under these stars, and God says these have been the constant fixtures of your life in the night sky every evening, but you don't know the first thing about them. They're mysteries to you. Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades? Can you loosen Orion's belt? Can you bring forth the constellations in their seasons, or lead out the bear with its cubs? Do you know the laws of the heavens? Can you set up God's dominion over the earth? The answer to all these questions, of course, is no. And in the final section then, God asks questions related to the living creatures of the earth and invites us to marvel at the fact that God's care and sovereign control extends to all aspects that humans are neither engaged with or related to or conscious of. Think of all the animal life that is being lived out upon this planet right now that you have no knowledge of at all. From the little creatures to the mighty beasts of the earth, in the sky and on the land and in the sea. You do not control them. You do not govern them. You can't even understand them, and yet God rules them all. One of the reasons why God takes this approach is to bring out within us the humility that we ought to have. Here is where we go so badly wrong, and going wrong here does great damage to ourselves. If we think, I understand all this, but I have these few questions unanswered, I don't know why I suffer in the ways that I currently do. Well, this chapter serves to point out you don't know anything, including this question. You're not powerful over everything else and then helpless when it comes to this little bit. No, in everything and in every way, you are utterly dependent upon and reliant upon God. Any knowledge you do have is just scratching the surface of the truth. And so, the call upon your life then is not to try and figure everything out and then feel a sense of mastery and accomplishment, but to trust the one who knows it all and holds the whole world in his hands.